there's always that little bit of nerve, until the conversation starts.
Gotcha. Excited or nervous, whatever way you want to call it.
Well, definitely excited to chat to you.
You say all the right things, Ryan, anyway.
Forum confidential.
A Forum Confidential podcast. I love it. No
Podcast.
cursing, I assume. Is it? Is there just cursing or anything like that?
You can say whatever you want.
Okay. Fine.
I'll ask you what's your superpower, and you go fuck yourself. Nice to have you here today. I just wanted to start off by asking you, what's something that you've never shared in an interview before?
So when I started Rudy in 2019, I'd listened to all the podcasts about starting businesses and stuff. And everybody said how hard you had to work and how long they were working at the start. And I really wanted to do that. But I started every morning at, 8 o'clock or a bit before 8. But I was done by 2:30 or 3 and I was kind of done for the day. And I reflected on it and I was like, I've never met, so I worked in over 100 corporates. I've never met anybody who could do really good concentrated work for more than 2 or 3 hours in a day. I never met anybody. And you can do loads of meetings, loads of chats, loads of things that feel like work, but sitting down, concentrating in the moment, in the flow, doing the work, I never met anyone who could do more than 2.5 hours a day. Never, ever. So while I was beating myself up a little bit at the time, I actually, the business grew really fast, really quickly. And I was really focused on just doing the stuff that was actually going to make a difference. Because I've done loads of exams and stuff, and I only ever studied for 2 or 3 hours a day, ever. And but I felt I was getting a lot done in that period, so I stopped beating myself up about it. And but I never tell anyone, because people are like, oh, you have to work really hard, there's this kind of acknowledgement that if you're not working 16 hours a day at the start of the business, something going wrong. Well, within 18 months, we were at 1 million. I wasn't working. I was working, finishing at 2 every day. I was out the horses. I ride horses out the horse at least 2 or 3 days a week. And it was just me, and my partner worked with me as well at the time. And we grew really quickly, but we had a real focus on what we were doing.
Was that the way you always applied yourself in life, even before you started a business?
So when I started, I was a consultant for about 15 years in a Big Four accounting firm, management consultant. And when I started, I was first in the morning, turned on the lights at 6 o'clock. I'd finish at 7 in the evening. And I really worked unbelievably hard. So I'd get my work done in the morning, and then I'd have meetings all during the day and what felt like work wasn't really, I didn't think was actual work. So I'd do all that during the day. So I'd have to do the work in the morning or in the evening. And as I progressed further and was more interested in being an entrepreneur I worked an awful lot less. So by the end, I was working 3 or 4 hours a day. I'd be turning up for 3 or 4 hours a day, getting paid very well, leaving, doing much better projects, much better project work. And clients were much happier to have me. They actually treated me with a lot more respect, actually, which is counterintuitive. But I could be gone at 3 o'clock and nobody ever, people would ask, is Ross around? No. And then it just gone. Now, there'd be times you'd have to work long hours and stuff, but it wasn't, I do feel there's this overemphasis on work. And if you're not doing loads of hours, but again, I haven't seen people who are sitting down for 2 or 3 hours, just doing unbelievable concentrated work. There's a lot of meetings and shit talk happening, but work of getting stuff done is different.
That's something that I definitely would struggle with, because when I kind of get ahead of myself, I'm like, oh, I have spare time here. But to actually sit with that spare time, it's like I feel like I have to be always moving or always doing something. So it's something I balance with at the minute and learning to try and lean into more because I know that I need that time to recover and energize to come back and apply myself again. So it's interesting to see or hear how how you started your business that way because I definitely was full on. You know, when I started business, it was nonstop. You know, so but obviously I was a lot younger and I would say didn't know as much. So yeah, it's interesting to hear that.
But like there's different ways. I think one of the things where, even in school, I would have been reasonably okay academically, not outstanding or anything, but I'd come home in the evening and my parents would be like, John down the road's studying 6 hours a night, and he's doing. And I was like, I actually physically can't do that. I can't concentrate for that long. So you get better at it in a short period. And like I'd be doing an hour maybe in the evening or whatever. But once I got through my exams and all that, I started to accept that not everybody does it the same way, and it's figuring out for me anyway. It's figuring out what you do now. I do longer days, a lot longer days now, but I have a team now, so it is a lot of chats, and people I think value those chats, and they are important and stuff. But if you're running a one man or two man band, I don't know what you'd be doing for 14 hours a day. Like I honestly don't know what you'd be doing because like you can do good work for a certain period of time, and then like unless you're physically doing activity, I don't know what you'd be doing.
Mm. What's a belief you had to let go of in order to become the person you are today?
Um, I think the main thing is that look, and it's very aligned with I think how you think. It's that success is not a big, massive number, 9 digit number after your business and huge explosive growth, raising a load of money and stuff. Um, I think I always would have been really focused on being the best and, comparing myself to lots of other people and chasing that. And just really in the last 3 or 4 years, I've really let go of that. Now I'm very focused on building the best business I can, but it's not focused on revenue as much. Revenue is important, but it's only one part of it. And having a really good business that has a really big impact on the environment and on the world is much more important to me now than being in the papers and I did a massive exit or something like that.
Hmm. Hmm. What was there a moment that changed everything for you?
Um, yeah, I suppose I can share a story that I was when I was 16 and I was working. I got a job as working in a building timber frame houses, which are like just the prefabs for the houses before you put them up. And I used to get the train every morning, and it was a 20-minute train journey, and then you'd walk for 20 minutes and then go out. And when I started, I was the first employee of the company, and they gave me a 20,000 square foot warehouse to build. So that's the equivalent of 10 normal size houses. And so I had to sweep that for a full day, or for a full week of sweeping, and hadn't been used in 5 years. So I swept that out. And when I finished, they started building stuff, and we were doing slabs, which was essentially holding up these um, massive things and hammering them in. And I was 16 and it wouldn't have been all that strong or whatever. But hours and hours doing this and holding them up, and my arms were killing me. And there was a guy, the foreman, and he was shouting and roaring and giving out to me and not holding them up long enough, not doing that. And at the end, I just couldn't do anymore. And I turned around to him and I said, "You can go and fuck yourself." Straight in his eyes, looked him straight in the eye and said it. And I I stormed out, I gave him another flurry of abuse and stormed out. And I just remember looking at him. He was probably late 30s at the time, and he's a 16-year-old kid. And I'd say he'd never been spoken to like that before. And I went out, but what the pivotal bit wasn't me saying it. I met the owner outside, and he saw me coming out, very annoyed. And he said, "What's going on?" And I said, "That guy in there now used all sorts of expletives, but that guy in there is nothing but it." And I used the C word, and I'm never coming back here again. I'm never working with that guy again. And he started roaring, laughing, and he said, "Jump into the car here. You have a flash car." And he said, "Jump into the car." And he used to bring me around the sites for the rest of the summer. And it was a much easier job, much more fun. And I actually learned loads from him. But when I think back now, I think it was pivotal because throughout my whole career, when someone was abusive, disrespect, anything like that ever happened to me, I immediately responded with an emotional outburst like that. And it became kind of a trademark that I would have been a little bit known for, because it would even said stuff to clients that probably wasn't appropriate. And but I never backed off. And when stuff and it's throughout my whole life, it's a base level that no matter what I'll just walk out. I'm just done. It's really shaped. And I think when I look back on it, it was what is the owner's reaction to it was like, this guy's going somewhere, because that's what I would think if someone said, like, if someone was just, because there's whinging and moaning, giving out and not turning up. And then there's facing it down, looking at the guy right in the eye when you're half his size or whatever, and giving it to him straight. I think it was a changer for me. I only thought of it recently, but it absolutely, how I've run my whole life since then, it's been when someone comes at me, I'll go straight back at
Mm. So then I would say that you're brave as a 16-year-old to say that to a grown man and a new job, to face up and say that is quite it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, I don't think it was courage. I think it was more, I'm a very emotional reactor, and I've softened over the years. I was very, very direct with people previously, people on teams and stuff like that. I'm quite an emotional, and it's all calm, 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 and then it just explodes. And very rarely happens. I'd say it's happened the last 2 years. It's maybe happened once. But it used to be, at least every 6 months there'd be some explosion on someone. And I don't think it's brave, but I haven't tried to ever diminish it in any way. I haven't tried to restrict it. I actually think it's a brilliant thing to have that I call it my edge. And so if there's someone just pushes me just far enough, there's a bit of edge there, and I'll be very pleasant, very nice, and I'm trying to help people do whatever they're trying to do. But there's edge there because everybody's got to have a bit of edge.
Mm, definitely. And that age led you to starting Rudy years ago. And you left a very well paying job with the big four and took a dive into Christmas jumpers.
Yeah, so it started kind of in two initial batches. The first one in 2010, I the whole world had crashed, and Ireland was particularly badly hit. So there was a massive economic crash, and the firm reduced salaries by 10%, reduced the headcount by 10%, but more importantly, cancelled bonuses. So I was in my mid 20s at the time, and I would have been on a six-figure salary at that stage. And then suddenly I'm not getting a bonus, but I'm working long hours. I'm doing a lot of work. And within a few weeks of that, I handed in my notice, and I told everybody I was going to set up a Christmas jumper company. And so in the teeth of where everybody's losing their job, 15% unemployment, I said, look, there's a market here for Christmas jumpers. And what had happened was the previous year, the kind of 12 pubs that emerged, and you mightn't remember those, but the 12 pubs were essentially, you went to 12 separate pubs, you had to wear a Christmas jumper in each pub and a Christmas sweater, and you'd have a drink. And very few people ever made the 12 pubs, but you had to wear a Christmas jumper. You couldn't, there was a, penalty shot or whatever you had to do. So, and you couldn't get them. They were like £70 to buy from the UK. There was one site selling them. So I went to China, and decided I was going to make my fortune selling Christmas jumpers. So yeah, I set up that business. It went great for 2 or 3 years, set up with my brother. And then 3 years in, the pennies pre-mark. We had an awful lot of jumpers ordered. We had, I think, maybe 12,000 Christmas jumpers on hand, and pennies landed 1 million Christmas jumpers in Ireland that year. And it was like 4 million people in Ireland at that stage, and 1 million Christmas jumpers arrived in. We got 2 years in, and things were flying. We had a load of retailers signed up. We had 8 pop-up shops across different things, across the different years. And myself and my brother, and we've been going reasonably well. And I walked into Penny's one day, and I've never seen as many Christmas jumpers in my life. Literally, like, never seen as many. And we had about 12,000 Christmas jumpers, and Penny's were selling them for €10, and we were selling them for €40. So we had a big problem. That we had all of these Christmas jumpers that were going to retailers, and we're selling online, and we're selling through our pop-ups, and we just couldn't compete. So I ended that year, and I had a good bit of debt at the end. I'd taken a little bit of money from friends and family, and I owed 150 grand at the end of the year, and I didn't have it. I owed the manufacturer 80 grand, and I owed friends and family 60 grand, and then had a few other bits and pieces. So I was out of the Christmas jumper business. I went back into KPMG, and
How did that feel at that moment where you want to start a business? Like, first of all, leaving what a big four firm and then jumping to Christmas jumpers. Was there people in your team, or did they say anything, or had they any thoughts on what you were doing?
yeah, I think people were beyond shocked, because I always would have told them I wanted to move up, and I wanted to make a partner, and I wanted to do that and all that. But that's the gig, right? So when you're in there, you're all in, and you tell them. Now, in reality, it could have easily happened that I went through my whole career and moved up the ranks and stuff. That could have easily happened. But I never in the back of my mind had any intention that I wanted to stay there past manager. I made manager, and then I just wanted out. So the cutting of the salary was a real, like, it was an absolute incentive. Like, it was pretty much the gods saying to me, what more do you want? Literally, like, you're practically working for minimum wage at the moment. You're working 78 hours a week, and you're getting paid, 60% of what you were getting paid last year. So it didn't make any sense. So I suppose jumping into Christmas jumpers was, a real crazy thing to do. But as I felt, where people made money was in the niches, and it wasn't set up to be a Christmas jumper shop in Ireland. It was set up to be a UK business, and then eventually scale into the US. But it was. I don't remember being scared or being nervous or anything at the time. I had a lot of probably misplaced confidence, and but I jumped straight in. And money concerns, and again, you probably won't remember this, but like, I bought an apartment the year before. I bought it for about 500,000, and it was worth 120 grand at that time. And I had a flash BMW that I couldn't afford. I had a load of personal debt because we were all living on the fact we're going to be making a lot more next year, right? So, and all my mates were the same. So there was an awful lot of debt floating around, but I always figured I could make a few quid, and it certainly wasn't going to be a 60 grand salary for working 70 hours a week. That wasn't how I was going to make money.
And then coming back in after having this dream of starting this business and it not working, how was that?
It was, as embarrassing as it might sound, and I, I don't get really embarrassed ever. Like, it's very rare that I've been embarrassed about something, but I was hugely embarrassed because I borrowed money from friends and family that I owed. Now, everybody got paid back in the end, but I owed all that money. And I went back in kind of tail between my legs. Like, people wouldn't know the extent of how bad it was, but they knew it wasn't great when I was in on the 2nd of January after a busy Christmas. They knew it wasn't there. So yeah, like, it was really humbling for me. But I do remember people at the time were really, really good to me, in terms of they would have, like, people who owed money weren't hassling me or anything like that. It was more a self pressure. Even the manufacturer, and like, we could have taken his business down. We owed him 80 grand, and we could easily taken his business down. He wasn't chasing me or pushing me or anything like that. And he needed the money, but, like, I had him paid off by June. But personally, it was, like, absolute massive dent to the ego, and very difficult. But, I've only started talking about it recently, and people have said they didn't know at the time. So maybe it was hidden fairly well, but yeah, it was like, it was an embarrassing time period for me.
Mm. How did you motivate yourself though to keep going? So you went back into the business, or sorry, back into the corporate gig, but it didn't
Yeah,
didn't hold you back.
no, I went back in, and um, the good thing about it was, when I went back in as a contractor. So that meant, so normally you'd go in as an employee, but I went back as, you'd work, be paid by the day, and the salary by the day is a lot better than the salary. So I was getting paid very well. Um, and the challenge I had was, I was moving up the ranks. So I was a director, by the time I left KPMG in 2018, and I was on a very big salary, and things were going really well. But I was looking at myself going, what am I going to, like, I could do this for the next 10 years, could do really well financially, but I won't have made, like, I won't have made any difference to anything. I loved working on the teams. The people were brilliant. I didn't love the projects. I liked fixing things, but I didn't love the projects. And, the outcome was, you do a great job with something, you finish something that shouldn't be able to be finished, and you get it done, and someone gets a letter from the regulator saying thanks for that, or the bank makes an extra 100 million or something like that. Like, it was kind of soul destroying. So, you put your best work in. And so I decided at the end of 2018, I said, I'm really passionate about the environment. I was hugely passionate about that. And I wanted to set up something that would help plant trees. And yeah, so I came up at that stage with the idea of Rudy. I had a little bit more cash built up at that point. I had everybody settled up and everything, and had a bit of cash and a bit of runway, and I started working from there.
When you look back at that moment, where you things didn't work and you went back to the corporate gig, is that a failure to you?
And I, so I never classed it as a failure until recently, and it never even dawned on me. And so I never shut that company down. It really has emerged from it. So it never went insolvent, never did. Everybody got paid. Um, Things go wrong all the time. And when I was in the firm, like, I remember someone saying to me, at one stage, God, everyone in here is terrified of failure. And I said, like, I literally said, like, what do you mean failure? Like, I'd never even heard the word, it wasn't a thing that people would go around saying, oh, it might fail or whatever. There was stuff might be late, it might be more expensive, it might be whatever, but it wasn't talked about as a failure. And I kind of looked at my own business the same way. It was like, look, this will emerge in some other way, shape or form. But actually, when I look now, it was complete another failure, like complete failure. Um, but a really helpful one, because I had so much hubris at that time and so much ego that the following year, I know I would have owed €1 million at the end of the year. If pennies had delayed a year, if I had borrowed more the previous year, there was no stopping me at that point. I would have bought whatever I could get my hands on, and that wouldn't have been recoverable, and people would have suffered for that. So, it was absolutely a failure. But it was a really great failure. And I still don't talk hugely about failures in our own thing, because we try loads of things that don't work. But I think the word failure brings a load of emotion with it. And I think when your team talks about failure, it kind of gets in on them. So it's more, you tried something, it didn't work, you try the next thing. So that's how I've always seen it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm failing all the time, but like they're little failures, but I'm learning through them. I mean,
Mm,
how can you define something as a failure? Is it when you give up? Is that when you say, right, okay, that's enough. I'm not doing this again? Or is that just
mm.
a lesson along the way. Right, okay, this is not the right way. I try to reframe it because I'm constantly making mistakes. And like expensive ones too. But
Mm.
I think that's just part of the game. It's just like, yeah, that was the lesson that I needed to learn so that I can make smarter decisions going forward.
Do you call them failures, mistakes? Like what do you call them?
I would say I call them lessons.
Mm.
I think the
Yeah.
words that we choose, what we experience in life is important, because as you said, the word failure, the emotion that's attached to that, like, you can reframe everything and try and look at it from a positive light. That's what I try to do anyway, and it helps me.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Like, it really, I always remember that question that someone said, "Oh, everyone's terrified of failure here." And honestly, you'd never hear the word, you'd never hear the word in a project, and because stuff is later, but there was never a thought we won't get this done and we'll have to abandon it. Like, because that wasn't like it just never even got mentioned. And it's only when I reflect back, I go, the emotion that's riddled with the word failure is, and I think if you're talking, me personally, when I'm talking to my team, we don't like, I've never mentioned failure. I've never mentioned, it's kind of, we made a mistake or we tried something that didn't work. But when someone says failure, you immediately go to yourself, oh, I've failed. But,
Hmm.
um, like anybody who's ever achieved anything has tried at least, you know.
Yes, 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 agreed. Do you feel self-doubt plays a role in your life?
Um, no. Um, I'm one of the few that I don't have. I know there's loads of things I can't do, um, but I think I can find someone to do almost anything. So I'm one of those that was brought up and told I was great the whole time. So, for good or evil, I was told my whole life that would be fine and everything would work out just fine. And very lucky to have that.
When
And when
when
I
you say
hear,
that, am I hearing your parents?
yes, yes,
I think
and
that's so important.
yeah, like, when I hear imposter syndrome and all that, honestly, I've never ever felt that. And because my whole life I was told, oh, and when I reflect back now, like, insane what they were telling me. Like, I'd be not good at rugby or not good at something or other. And they're like, oh, you're well able to do it. I know you can do it. And it's like, I don't have kids, but it's a superpower to give someone that, like, you know, I know there'd be some kids that would go around and they're not good singers and they get into bad situations. My parents 100% did it in the right way. Everything I did, like even from Christmas jumpers, they were like, you are going to absolutely smash this. I know well you are. And like, you've enough people rooting against you, but if your parents are in your corner, and like they must have been going, this guy's got a great job. He's in a big four. He's on a really good track and he's given this all up to sell 25-year Christmas jumpers. Like they must have been, but they never said that. They said, oh, you're dead right. You absolutely smashed this. And maybe it's worked a little bit against me that I'm much too much, but no matter what happens to me, I feel I can get out of it. I'll be okay.
You must have always had a dream though to start your own thing.
Yeah. So money would always been tight at home. My dad had a big farm, but there was a lot of debt with it. Um, and there was a lot of pressure. He was working on his own and he was milking 110 cows a day, which isn't a huge amount. And he'd go down first thing in the morning and he'd bring them back
Wow.
and he'd milk them every morning. He'd be up at 6 and every evening they had to be milked as well. And that was 7 days a week. And he'd be calving and he was the first. He'd have cameras. So our house was in a mile away from the farm. So he'd have cameras, running from the house and he'd go back and forth. Um, so and my mum was working full time as well. So there was a bit of pressure financially. Now, we wouldn't have really felt as hugely like we still had holidays and stuff like that, but there was this underlying debt that he'd inherited this farm with hundreds of thousands of debt on it and 20% interest rates. So just to pay the interest was very difficult. So I would have always had that. So I think in the back of my mind, it was always I need to make money. There was a couple of people I'd seen and they'd be coming home with cash, they had cash businesses. And I used to see, there was one person in particular and he'd arrive home and I used to see him and he'd have a briefcase of cash. And I was like, whatever he's doing, I want a bit of that. So he was an entrepreneurial type, and and it was all legit business and all that. There was nothing wrong with it, but it was just that time, there wasn't cards and stuff like that. So yeah, it was always in my head that I wanted to set up my own business. And even when I went to college, like I was looking, I went to college to learn how to be an entrepreneur. So I went when I was 16, I was 17 when I went to college, but I went at 16, I went to all the universities to find who teach me how to run my own business. And I did business studies degree and they taught me how to be an accountant. So I came out of there, I went in trying to be an entrepreneur and I went out and they had me training to be an accountant. So like there's something messed up in
What
that,
what changed there?
in my mindset.
No, that you went to college to become an entrepreneur, came out with the job. What
Mm.
was what was the change in that resulted in a job?
Yeah, I think because you're in a group of people and nobody was setting up their own business. So I went with that in mind. And so then I went off to Australia for a year and I came back and everyone I spoke to said, get a job first, get really, get a good base, get it so that you have something to fall back on. Now, I didn't ask any entrepreneurs because I didn't really know any entrepreneurs, but I've never heard an entrepreneur give that advice. Make sure you have a good fallback. Like I've never, like it's not something I'd ever advise, and I'm sure it's not something you'd say. No, make sure you have a good steady job that you can go back to if it goes wrong. Like it's not, because you're either doing it or you're not doing it. But it was that kind of a thing that I didn't have someone that was going, that's how they did it. And it was kind of pre YouTube stuff as well, where you would have, people see that now and pre Dragons Den and stuff. So what was real success back then was getting a big four job or a job in a big investment bank or something like that. That was real success. And then you could grow your business. You could start your business when you were 30. And now I know you started while you were still in college, and I really regret that I didn't start something while I was in college.
You said something too. You were with a group of people, and they all went and got a job. It's sometimes it's hard to break that mold because that's so out of our comfort zone, and we want to stay in the comfort zone of just be in the environment, staying in the environment that we're already in. And I think that's what a lot of us can fall into, and I have fallen into too in different ways. But something that I'm always trying to be mindful of now is like, who am I spending my time with, and how is it helping me get to where I want to get to? And that has led me to connecting with you, with EO Ireland and being around entrepreneurs more, which is something I didn't do enough of. You know,
Yeah, 100%. Like I'm blown away by you in college and what you were doing, right? Like selling phones and growing from there and all that. And like when I started Rudy, I was 38 or 39. Um, and all my friends are CEOs, CFOs, partners, consultants. They're all in corporate and I didn't know anyone. And I said, I'm not making the same mistake as last time. And who you hang out with, you're the average of the five people you hang out with most, right? So I had to move up the level and
mm-hmm.
all the lads are great, but like I had to find entrepreneurs who were trying to scale and grow or who were growing and scaling. And it's been a huge gap for me. When you were in college, like what led you to start? Like what was the,
I always had an interest in business. That was just something it was like a knowing for me ever since I was a kid. It's just like, I know I'm going to start a business. I just knew that. I didn't know how I was going to get there. I wasn't too worried about how I was going to get there. And then the idea crossed me where I wanted to buy a mobile phone, and I seen that they were expensive to buy it SIM free at the time on lock, which wasn't common. So that led me to doing some research, and then um, finding suppliers, going to China like you did, and start selling them
wow,
online. Yeah. So, but I
wow,
I didn't think too much about it at the time. I was just like, okay, this is an opportunity, and I just rolled with it, and it just
wow.
unfolded. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So
And was that a mindset move for you?
it was to see what was out there, but I realized that that's not where I was going to be buying the phones from.
Mm,
So we
mm,
ended up
mm.
buying them from Europe and stuff, So like it was, even though they're made there, they weren't being sold from there. The way that the manufacturers have it all sewed up is that they're just made there, but they're all exported to their distributors and things like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it was
yeah,
an
of course.
interesting lesson, yeah.
Yeah. And like, had you friends in college who were setting up their own?
No, it just set it just set me on a different path to all them, and I started disassociating with them. Not just because I was given so much time to this. I was going into college. I wasn't even. I was just going to the college computer room and just working all day. I just didn't even study anymore. Just give all my
Huh.
time. I failed my exams.
Well, you didn't fail, did you? Is it more you tried and didn't
I
succeed?
tried it. I just didn't pass them. But do you know what? I always look back at that, and I even tried to go back and see if I could do them exams again, but they wouldn't let me. So I was like, "That's fine," because there was a little part of me that was still hanging on to it. It's just like, oh, would it be nice just to get that degree? Although I don't think I'm ever going to use it. But it's like I give 3 years to college. I got my first 2.5 years exams, and then the third or the second half of third year just fell flat. And
Yeah,
so I was just like, I'm not even bothered to repeat. So in my own head, I'm like, I did 3 years. I did enough to get it, but I didn't get the actual certificate.
yeah, and I wonder will it matter ever again, those kind of certs anymore? Like, just look at the way stuff is going now. It just wouldn't be going.
Definitely not,
Wouldn't be going.
unless I want to take up a career as a civil engineer.
You never know. You never know.
Maybe. Who knows? Who knows? Was there a mindset shift for you coming from corporate to being an entrepreneur? Were there things that played with you that you were like,
Totally. Like, it's hard to even class them in the same realm, right? With being an entrepreneur in a business. And people look at corporates and go, how are they doing it? How are they doing it? I've seen how they're doing it. There's very few companies in Ireland that haven't, big companies that haven't been in. It's not, it's not something to hold up a candle to and say, wow, these guys are doing it. A lot of the big corporates make money to spite themselves. So they've built this huge brand and huge, but when you look at it, most of it is legacy activity that they're making their money from. It's very rare that you see like, big, massive corporates that are, really driving and doing the entrepreneurial stuff. They've this big legacy base of customers and just continues to make the money. And they've so many staff doing so many things that maybe you could argue the value of. And when you're in a business and you're running your own thing, it's completely different because the only things that matter are the things that are going to make your business more money, more sustainable, more impactful. I mean, more sustainable from a financial point of view, but more impactful. And you don't have time for the other stuff that goes on around the edges. And like I hear entrepreneurs talking now all the time, and it's like they're trying to squeeze more value out of, they're trying to squeeze growth, and it's a totally different mindset to a big corporate. Big corporate is about getting your boss happy and getting and making sure that you're not embarrassing yourself, not making a mess of something, as opposed to driving and building something.
Yeah, because I have this kind of impression of corporate it being, shirt and tie, it's very super formal, and I have no idea what it's like, but because they're such huge companies. And then from my experience running a small company, it's so informal. So you coming from such a big organization to now Rudy, how many staff have you?
We've 12 at the moment, and we'll be growing a bit more over the next 12, but yeah, 12.
What's the culture difference?
It's not night and day. Like, and just to say on the corporate, there's some special people in corporates who make unbelievable difference to people, like unbelievable. And just despite all the noise and all the stuff that goes on, there's some just unbelievable people. But yeah, the big difference is, um, I really care about what we're doing. And the team that I hire and work with us and stay with us really care about our mission. So our purpose is we plant a tree for every item we make. We've planted, well, I've planted 450,000 trees to the end of last year, and in the 5 years we've been around. And we're on a journey to plant 10 million trees by 2035, because that's the best thing we can do for the planet. And when you work in something like that you actually care about, you get up in the morning. I never got up and didn't want to come to work, but like you're going, even when stuff is difficult, even when stuff is hard, even when you've got pressures on, there's a passion and a purpose. And, when you're working with us, like we report every week on the number of trees planted. So last week it might have been 12 or 1300 trees. It's a huge number of trees, right? It's over an acre of trees planted in an area that's completely deforested in the worst part of the world, like from a climate change point of view. And we just throw that away as this is our thing. And I'm constantly telling people, guys, think about an acre of land and getting a tree planted up and all of that. Like it's huge, 2 acres of land. So 450,000 trees, like big companies boast about doing 10,000 trees. We're a very small company and you can have a huge impact, and it's not an impact for now or for tomorrow, but for the next, 30, 40 years.
Mm. Is the environment something that you've always been keen about, interested in?
More the last 10 years more than previously. I've heard you use the term of money, money, money. Before then, there was a lot of focus on that, but that's evolved over time. I do spend a lot of time out and about. I have a number of horses that a friend of mine looks after, and I spend a lot of time outside and a lot of time doing stuff like that. And um, I hate going places where stuff is destroyed, where the environment is destroyed. And that's the point I'm coming from. It's like you go to the Great Barrier Reef, or you go to Brazil, or you go somewhere and the place is destroyed when it should be absolutely perfect and it should be protected and it should be. And I hate that. I hate that us driving economic stuff, which has to be done, but not the way it is being done, has led to that. That's what's really deep in a deep passion for me. And like, David Attenborough has said the best thing we can do for the planet right now is plant trees. And I 100% agree with him. The best thing we can do for the planet is plant trees. So we have to figure out a way of doing that. So my idea is that use my consulting background and my pragmatic approach, and we try and find ways. And what I'd love is if that company started copying us, especially in this industry. I've seen a few emerge that are starting to do variations of it. But if companies copy us, I'll be over the moon, because we've done it really successfully, and we're growing and building something special. I'm really hoping other people copy us. That's my hope.
Thanks, Russ. I believe that it's important too. I think that if we can have a make a difference approach first in business, what is the purpose of this business? I think we as a species can move better together, and start looking after the planet. Something that I'm adapting to with projects I'm taking on board. So yeah, thanks for sharing. In terms of decision making, can you give me an insight into how you apply yourself? Does intuition play much of a role?
It played 150% of a role up until recently, till I got a management team. So I've been, I'm, I really, I'm your classic guy who just jumps into the middle of stuff, gets all excited about it at the start, and then what tends to happen is I'm not as focused on it because I'm on to the next shiny thing. So it's been intuition, intuition, intuition. What I've built now and who I've hired are really sensible thinkers and pragmatic people who will get stuff done. So I'm not allowed to just go off intuition anymore. I'll come up with ideas, I'll come up with a plan, I'll come up with mad stuff. a lot of the time they go, yeah, that seems great. Leave it sit for a week and then come back and think, okay, do we still want to do this? And how would we do it and all that? So it's a much more evolved approach, and it's definitely, I'd love to just do what my intuition is, but I'm wrong a lot of the time. So I've been right a few times and been right big, but I am wrong a lot of the time. So that can be frustrating for people.
Fair play, fair play. Yeah, look, decision making can be a challenge one. I too sometimes like to go on, okay, this feels right, but doesn't always mean I'm right. So I definitely like to take a logical approach now, test out a few different ways, and because sometimes intuition can be expensive.
Yeah, I think we all learn. A mutual friend of ours, Paul, calls it very expensive education, you know, where you make these mistakes. And one of the reasons I joined EO, which you mentioned before, was I kept making mistakes that if I had spoken to an entrepreneur who had done it before, I wouldn't make them. And to get those learnings from people who go, oh, well, I did that before and this is what happened. You're like, that, that's just saved me. That just saved me 50 grand that I would, that I won't make that mistake or whatever.
Yeah, I hear you. And some things that I've learned from you too there. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, 100%. We'll learn loads from you for sure.
what does success look like to you, Ross? If you were to put it in the box.
Um, there's a few things. A good family life where everybody's happy and um, that I'm fit, happy, and healthy. But a key enabler for all that is business has to be good. So, and when I say good, it's got to be strong and solid, profitable and growing, and having a big impact on the environment. And the reason for the money stuff is that I really want to, like, one of the big impacts we can all have is that we can pay our staff really well, have them have a rewarding career, and that they enjoy coming into work in the morning. And that's not something to be sniffed at. Like, that is something really important. Having seen people, a lot of people, a lot of jobs who didn't like it and hated it every day, it's to have people who enjoy it, and that, you know, as a small business, you can pay them enough to keep them and keep them happy. And like, so we're 4.5 day week. Everybody works in here, and that's a big part of it. But yeah, the family stuff and the fit, happy, healthy is really important to me, you know, and having time to do things that I want to do.
Hmm. Were you someone who cared much about what other people thought of you?
Yes, probably still am to 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 a big extent. Yeah, for sure. Is I'm always interested in this. Is this every man in the world compares themselves to, and every person in the world maybe even compares himself to other guys? Because I haven't met anyone who's not in a constant comparison. You know, you're sizing someone up. I do feel it's an evolutionary thing that you're sizing someone up and all that sort of stuff. I'm better at not doing it now, but definitely care what people definitely care what people think. A lot less the last 5 years than I did before that, but um, I think with age it'll probably ease a bit. What about you? Do you?
Yeah, I would say so. Now, not so much. I probably I I mean, there's always going to be a little part of you. I feel like there's always going to be a little part of okay. I do care what people think. But years ago, most definitely, I would have cared a lot about what other people think. But now, I'm happy to say I don't care what other people think because whatever they think is what they think. That's on them. But I mean, I care about the people that are in my life, the people that I like, because obviously I value them. The people that I value is probably the best way to put it. Yeah.
I think that's a really important distinction. I couldn't give a crap what the fellow down the road thinks, for example. Like that wouldn't even, you know,
Mm,
but it would be. peers and friends and family and stuff like that, and what they would think would be more. But yeah, and you're probably right. I probably would have cared about the fella down the road talked about 10 years ago. So, but now if I don't know them and they're not something, definitely couldn't care less about that. But people I know and people absolutely that's I do care what they think. But I do admire you. You're very much in yourself, like you know that you're really content with who you are, or you come across like that anyway. And I think you are. Like from all the time I've spent with you, you really can, you know, you really know who you are, and you're content with who you are. And I get the sense from you. I'm surprised you care at all what people think, because I'd say you don't. You're very happy with who you are, what you are.
No, no, as I said, I don't care what other people think, but I do. I mean, if there's someone that I love and value, I care because obviously I want to be there for them and I want them obviously to be in my
Yes,
life too. So that's what it comes back to. But like
I get you.
doing this podcast, I don't care. I mean, if I cared what other people think, I probably wouldn't be doing it, you know. And I've had
Yeah.
comments come back to me, who people that I chat to and people that I suppose enjoy what I do, and others have said to them, you know, who does he think he is? Things like that. So I'm just like, I don't even need to know their names. Um, but I'm just like, whatever, you know, I don't care what they think. It's not going to hold me back. And I think that's an important factor for life is that when we care too much about what other people think, it can hold us back. It's like a fear of living our truest best self. And I think, and that can be in business too. It's just like I have a fear of going into business because what if I fail and what will other people think of me? You know, it all comes back to thinking what other people think. And I think if you were to take the mindset of what if I don't give a shit about what people think today, and I just go and do what I want to do and I be what I want to be, you're going to live your best life, you know. And I think
It's
that's,
really, yeah,
yeah, important.
yeah. No, that's really interesting. And like if you think of me, right, knowing friends and family, smallish sums, but big sums for them at the time and big sums for me at the time. And it's like when the worst thing happens in terms of imagine you borrowed from everyone who you give a shit about and you didn't have the money to give them back. Um, you very quickly, that's kind of your worst case scenario because I know it's small numbers, but it's your worst case scenario. Like if you owe a venture capital fund 2 million, it's not a big deal. But if you owe friends and family 10 or 20 grand, it's a big-ish deal that you can't
Mm.
pay immediately. So I think once I went through that, um, I think like they would have cared. Oh, Ross has to be seen to be very successful. But when you've had a massive crash, like now, I don't care what anybody, whether people think I'm successful or not, because you know it's very hard to focus on the business if you care about that and do the right things for the business.
Yeah, I get that impression from you. I think the way that I mean, from my perspective of knowing you, is just like I see the setbacks that you've have had, and it's just like it does, if anything, it propels you forward. Because I mean, doing what you've done, having that setback, and still going on and still being successful, and telling people to go fuck themselves whenever you feel like it. You know, it's just nothing's going to stop Ross of getting in the way of what he wants to do.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there's a bit of that. Yeah, look, setbacks are great. And I'm constantly saying to people, your worst time, and it's hard to say it at the time, but your worst time is your story that you quote all the time. You know, so your worst time when something's gone really wrong in the business
Mm.
and 100 things have gone wrong. That's a real opportunity to talk about. Oh Jesus! And even at that time, like there's some proper war stories in the group we're in EO. There's some proper war stories there, and you see the guys that how they've come out, and they're just and the stories are amazing. You know.
Mm. Yeah, and I think when we can embrace the dark moments, them really tough times, we be grateful for them in the future because and it can be hard to see that in the moment. But if we for me, I do look at that, you know, now when I'm going through a tough moment, I'm like, right, I know this is tough right now, but I know that this is going to serve my highest good, and I'm going to come through this. I'm like, right, I'm grateful for this experience. You know, can be hard in the moment, but if you can, I mean, if I when I do apply that, it becomes easier. You know, when you start to move through it a lot faster.
Definitely. definitely. It's just a setback, right? And just
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Are there any things in your life that you used to value that you don't anymore?
um, I thought I really valued money to Marie, my partner, said to me, she said, I never met anyone who gives less of a shit about money than you. Like, so I thought like money, but I get what she means. I don't really like, you won't, I'm not the classic entrepreneur haggling over €20 or 30, like whatever it is, just pay it and get on with it and all that kind of stuff. And having enough to do the next thing and do the next project and all that is really what we care about. Like, I'm not chasing huge money for myself personally or anything like that. That's not in me anymore. Um, and that's changed a lot because I used to care a lot about getting the maximum amount of money I could possibly get. And now that's so far down the list. It's having enough, and of course, like doing nice things and doing all that sort of stuff. But I'm not chasing, tens of millions a year or anything like that in terms of personal wealth. It's not a big priority of mine. That's completely changed.
So how do you balance that ambition then with contentment?
The fun is the doing the thing, right? So the process for me is the fun bit. So um, it makes much more of a difference to me planting hundreds of thousands of trees. And like we could, if we weren't a sustainable business, we'd be 10 times the size we are now. Like we're operating in an American market that doesn't really care about the environment, or it's not something our customers ask a lot about. They do, so we maybe 15, 20% really passionate about it, but most don't. So we could really reduce our prices. We could go to a lot, we could go to bad factories. We could go and do a lot of stuff. So it's huge costs, and we could bring down costs and we could massively increase. But it's the balance now is on actually growing something that I care about. And I really do care about this stuff. So, it means a lot to me that we're getting, we'll get to 1.5 million trees, if not next year, the year after. And that kind of growth and the focus on that is much more important to me, because that's something I look back and I go, wow, imagine we did that. That's brilliant.
Mm. You mentioned growth. Is there anything that you're still working on within yourself?
Um, Loads of things. I can't think of anything I'm not working on.
What's the biggest one?
um, the biggest thing is on. What is the biggest thing I'm working on? I think being settled. Um, I am constantly bouncing, and you've met me enough times to know I'm constantly bouncing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, and I keep trying to do meditation, and I keep trying to settle, and I really struggle with it, because I have a million ideas and 10,000 things I want to do, and to be in the moment and settled is a challenge for me. So when I ride the horses or whatever, that's kind of when I'm at complete peace, because all I can do is focus on what I'm doing at the time. I'm not thinking about business, not thinking about personal, not thinking, I ride horses that are too good for me that I'm not able to. So when I'm sitting on them, I have to be present and in the moment. But I'd love to get good at meditation because I do feel better after it. I know you've been trying it a bit as well. How do you find, have you improved? Have you got better at
I would say where I'm at, I'm very content with my meditation. Like I started a few months ago, started off with 10 minutes a day, first low amount, and then the next week 11 minutes, and then the next week 12 minutes, and I built it up to 20 minutes. Now I don't put a
it?
timer on, so I'm content with 20 minutes, and I
Oh,
just do it every day. And even though I'm sitting there, just close my eyes and just breathing, I still get lots of thoughts. So it's not like I don't. I think we have this perception where meditations you sit in silence and think of nothing, and it's not. For me, it's not anyway. It's just about making time to sit still and breathe and know that your thoughts
mm,
come in, but as they come on, you
mm,
just forget about them and come back to the breath. So yeah, it's been good from a discipline point of view, and yeah, that's
Mm.
kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, that'd be the bit that I'd struggle with. I'm fine when I'm doing it, and I agree with you. The thoughts come in and go or whatever, but you have to sit here now, just sit down for
Mm,
5 minutes, just see what's going on. I do struggle with that. I'm full of energy.
yeah, my my tip on it is just like 5 minutes. Just sit still for 5 minutes for a week. Build consistency and momentum. Even if it's 1 minute, it's more me. For me, it was more the practice of doing it, not how long I was
Mm.
doing it, and then I
I
was
love
able to
that.
build on that.
I love that. So just go sit in the chair and then see how long you can see how long you feel like doing it. That's the
Yeah,
idea. Try
yeah,
that.
yeah. But again, everyone's different, so it's like whatever works for you.
Yeah, for sure.
If you were to go back to your younger self, Ross, say Ross as a teenager, what advice would you give to him starting out in the world?
I'd say the main thing would be to try something while you're in college, to do what you did, and to try and make some money and try and do something while you're in college. I really don't have many regrets, but that's one. Like, it started late, like I was 27 or 28, I think, when I started Christmas jumpers. And it's fine, but it just, it set me back a good few years. Um, I think everything else, I had a great 20s and 30s. So, like, I don't have I think it's, if I was to do something, I'd be to try something earlier. That would be the advice I'd give myself.
It's funny that you say that because you're saying like start younger, um, but like 27 is quite young too to start a business
Mm.
still, you know. Um, I know I started at 19. Then there's a little part of me like, oh, maybe I should have waited it out and give myself less responsibility. But I mean, things happen. But no, it's interesting that you share that perspective.
I guess I wasn't the guy selling lemonade or selling the Christmas logs and stuff like that around when I was in school. So I wasn't kind of the natural entrepreneur. And starting early, getting failures early, if we can call them early failures or not, I think it just it's just no harm. But you're right, like, I look at it as very late, but most people I know, I suppose they didn't have a crash. So most of them who are still around, you don't hear, it didn't have a crash so early in it that it evolved and evolved and evolved. Whereas I was kind of knocked out at 31, 32 and back in again then later on. So it's kind of one of
Mhm.
those. But yeah, look, it's just a personal thing. I do feel the colleges are such a good time. Like, we had 12 hours lectures a week and we went to one or two, and you have so much time and we had so much crack and all that, but I could have been doing something, something would have been good.
Yeah, that's it's an interesting one to think about because in college there is so much time, and a lot of us will
Mm,
just spend it being a college student and going out, and but then others may take the initiative to start something, which a lot do. Yeah, very
yeah.
good. What's next for Ross?
Um, I have loads of ideas. We're mainly in the US at the moment, so we're working on the Irish business. Um, just with tariffs and stuff coming, we've a little bit of work to do on that. But it's all pretty seamless at the moment. We have everything set up, but we just want to focus a little more on Ireland and across Europe. We've a smallish base, maybe 20% of our business is here, and so we're going to do some work on that. And I have a couple of ideas that I'm kind of kicking around at the moment. I have an AI idea that like everyone, like every entrepreneur in the world, everyone has some AI idea, but I have a particular itch I'd like to scratch on that. So I'm just starting to kind of shape that out a little bit. At the moment, I've appointed a kind of a general manager type to run the day to day Rudy, so that I can. Um, I am a bottleneck at the moment, and we have a great team, so there's no need for me to be that bottleneck. So that kind of handover of me being less involved in the day to day is happening.
Fair play. Ross, thank you very much. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Been an absolute pleasure.